If you clicked on this video, I'm assuming you already know how an iceberg chart works. Icebergs generally cover one specific topic with well-known entries at the top that progressively get more disturbing and mysterious as you move downwards. To preface this video, I tried to avoid any entries on the iceberg that just required me to read a scary story, whether it be real or fake, so that's why there's gaps here and there. I'm also skipping a lot of entries because they're just unsatisfying or not too interesting, or I just didn't want to cover them. But before we jump into this iceberg, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, Audible. If you're like me, then you'll often find yourself listening to audio while writing a script, editing a video, doing homework, or playing a video game. That's where Audible comes into play. Audible is the leading provider in audio-based entertainment with thousands of titles to choose from, such as audiobooks, podcasts, comedy, and Audible originals you can't find anywhere else. Personally, I found myself listening to titles like Everything's Eventual, a compilation of horror stories by Stephen King, which is something I think viewers of this channel would enjoy. Audible users are given a credit a month to pick any title they want, along with 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and you can keep your credits for up to a year before you have to decide on what you want. By using the link audibletrial.com/nightfair, you can sign up for a free 30-day trial, and by doing so, you support this channel. That's audibletrial.com/nightfair. Thank you to Audible for sponsoring this video. The Evil Farming Game. The Evil Farming Game is the title of a post from r/tipofmyjoystick, where a user attempts to find the name of a game that he used to have downloaded back in 2016. It was a farming game where you kill your wife and then attempt to conceal her body from the authorities. There was this one fishing minigame where you had to fish up evidence of your wife's murder and then you would pass out. OP says he got it off some indie dev website and it wasn't a kid's game or an RPG maker. In the comments you can find a link to another post from the same subreddit where yet another user, 2 years beforehand, asked about the Evil Farming Game. This user describes the game as like Harvest Moon, but with a dark twist. You get into a fight with your wife and end up stabbing her to death, but the game revolves around you trying to farm and keep the town from finding out your wife is dead. Sounds pretty similar to the post 2 years ago. But it doesn't stop there. A year after the first post was made, a now deleted user, You Done Me a Bamboozle, made another post inquiring about a game. OP says that he found his old laptop but it won't boot up, but he knows on the laptop there's a game where, you guessed it, you kill your wife, and you farm. Users were quick to notice the similarities between the 3 posts, and saw the laptop as a way to finally end this multiple year-long rabbit hole. Unfortunately, in later posts, OP tells us that the laptop had sustained too much water damage for anything to be recoverable, even after Reddit was willing to help finance his data recovery, so that's where the rabbit hole unfortunately ends. Or is it? There's actually a whole community, r/thatevilfarminggame, dedicated to finding out what game these 3 users were talking about, and how they're pretty sure they found the answer. There's an animated video of Vinesauce talking about what if there was a game like Harvest Moon where you have to kill your wife and then hide the body, strikingly accurate to what the first post we mentioned describes. The OP of that first post confirmed that he was a Vinesauce watcher and was on some medication that caused hallucinations at the time, so it's entirely possible that OP fell asleep after watching that video and just dreamt that he had played a game Vinesauce described, which is the most plausible explanation. Key Lime Pie Rabbit Hole. I'm sure if you're watching this video you probably know about the famous tale of Key Lime Pie, but I'll give everyone a short summary. Nextspot has a good video about this, so I'll put a link in the description. Basically, there's a bunch of extremely strange reviews for Captain Coochie's Key Lime Pies, which is a restaurant that may or may not exist, and I'm not even certain whether these people making the reviews actually exist. Maybe it was some sort of marketing scheme to make this restaurant look good, but I don't think any conclusions have been found on this. Yay video games. Basically, a post was made by u/IwishIWasAmeme titled "Just Got Oblivion for PC. What are your favorite mods?" This is talking about Skyrim if you couldn't tell. A user by the name of Yay Video Games replied with the uninstall button. The game is great and all, but god, is it hard to fully remove all the junk it leaves behind on your system. You really need to check out that mod when the time comes to get rid of it. Someone replied to this comment with, "What?" And it all went downhill from there. Yay Video Games then responded with the uninstall button. The game is great. Ubisoft goes Steamworks bye bye, always on DRM, but you oft go work, always on work DR. Check out the junk it leaves behind in you. Which prompted the response, that makes even less sense. Yay Video Games would go on to make over 4,000 comments on that post, each a variation of his gibberish line, Ubisoft goes Steamworks bye bye, always on DRM. And I'm not talking about a simple copy-paste spam. This man sat down and typed 4,000 different comments. He would also do this type of spam on different posts of differing topics. I think from investigating his other accounts, it was found out that he was actually bedridden with some illness. It was actually a very interesting rabbit hole that had its own subreddit, but eventually a friend of Yay Video Games would reach out and tell the community that Yay Video Games started isolating himself from the world in 2015, which was 5 years before his post about Skyrim, and that he is no longer with us. Eric and Annie. I'll link Debunk's file video to this in the description, but to sum it up, a user named Eric made a post on a friend finding subreddit where he was willing to get together with some fellow Reddit users so that he could buy them some pizza and just hang out. A user named Annie responded saying she loves the idea but didn't live close enough to actually go out. She said that she and Eric would make great friends, but she doesn't want a private message because it might offend her significant other if they found out she was PMing someone else. They would go on to have a conversation in the comments of that post that consisted of 24,000 replies, and when the post was archived, they just created another post for them to comment on. But eventually Annie sends a lengthy message that says she can't do this whole relationship anymore. Keep in mind that this is at a time where Annie is single, but Annie says she can't stand when Eric talks about any other women, so she thinks they could never be together since they could never be transparent with each other. Annie never replied to the comments ever again, but Eric would go on to make replies for the next few years, almost as if he was having a one-way conversation. Eric eventually stopped replying as well and wasn't seen for about a year, but he was later spotted in the comments of a completely different subreddit, so I'm sure wherever he is, he's okay. Lake City Quiet Pills. On July 17, 2009, a post was made titled "The End of Religion of Peace." Summarized, the post basically says that the user Religion of Peace, whose real name is Milo, died today at the age of 79 while browsing Reddit. Following the popularity of this post, users dug deeper and found out that OPU/2-6 had an account on a news website that went under the name of Angel2-6. In OP's bio, it said, "Dispensing Lake City Quiet Pills to those in need of permanent rest since 1968. On September 30th of the same year, Angel2-6 would make an announcement on the news website stating that he bricked Milo's iron key, meaning that he destroyed Milo's flash drive. Following that, on November 14th, Angel2-6 said that Milo was loaded into email shade if we sent you out in 2005 through 2009. But sent people out to do what exactly and why they would be entitled to some of Milo's money is unknown. In January the next year, Angel2-6 posted messages about something taking place in the Marriott on 46th and also that phones were not secure. A few days later, an assassination took place at a hotel in Dubai around the same time that Angel2-6 described, so some people believe that Angel2-6 was planning an assassination in his posts. But the similar timing seems to be the only connection between these two incidents. It's also been suspected that Quiet Pills is supposed to be slang for bullets, so there's a connection, but that's kind of obvious. My mom poisoned me. On r/offmychest, a confession subreddit, a post was made 8 years ago about OP who was trying to find somewhere to work, but his family was reluctant to let him go. He first started off as a cook, but has to quit after about a year and a half because of health-related issues. When OP finally received a job offering as a programmer, it was somewhere out of town, so he had to relocate in this new city. OP's whole family became very hostile to him starting days before he left, and on the day he was scheduled to leave, his mother gave him 2 cups of instant ramen noodles that come in those little styrofoam cups, along with an assortment of other food items. Eventually, OP made it to his hotel, and after the first day of work, he decided to try one of the cups of ramen. Shortly after, OP fell ill, and over the week, OP's mom kept calling to make sure that he ate the noodles because she knew that he was low on cash. OP never told his mom that he actually ate the noodles though, but when OP looked into this, he actually compared his symptoms to that of cyanide poisoning. Eventually he orders a cyanide test kit and he uses it on what I assume to be the other cup of noodles. Attaches a photo of the test results which clearly showed that OP's ramen noodles were laced with cyanide. This settles OP's suspicions and he eventually speaks with the authorities, but they say they can't do anything about the matter. Brandy Worley. In 2016, a Redditor named Jason in Hell made a post to the relationship advice subreddit about how he caught his wife cheating on him with a neighbor. He confronts his wife about this, but his wife goes on the defensive and tries to justify her actions. Eventually his wife threatens to take the kids away if Jason keeps on being mad at her, so he decides to forgive her for his 2 children's sake, even when she cheats on him again a year later. The comment section erupted with advice for Jason, saying he's totally in the right, he should divorce her and try to get custody of the children, so Jason makes a follow-up post saying that he's going to take Reddit's advice and wish him luck. Later, on the other side of the internet, a double homicide was reported in Darlington, Indiana. A mother was charged for killing her 2 children. The mother's name was Brandy Worley, and she said that she killed them because she did not want her husband divorcing her and taking the children. Her husband's name was Jason Worley. I'm guessing by now you've put the pieces together, but if you haven't, Jason in Hell made a follow-up post that reads the following. Update, thank you. I would like to give a heartfelt and sincere thank you for the advice and support I have received here. No one could have foreseen the tragedy that resulted from me filing for a divorce, along with a link to the news article about the double homicide in Indiana. Truly a sad case for everyone involved on Jason's side. Reddit was just trying to do the right thing, but I can't imagine the guilt that rests on the Redditor's shoulders after giving Jason advice, but as Jason said, it's none of their faults. Scott Clisholti. Also in 2016, a user posted to the Ask Reddit subreddit inquiring about users who have accidentally killed someone and what exactly went wrong. Among the various replies, there was one comment that stood out. A throwaway account that was deleted right after the comment told a story about how back in the 80s, he and his friends might have accidentally left a kid out to die in a storm. The story goes like this. As kids, OP and his friends had a dirt cliff that they would play on, a large one at that. One day, OP and his group made their way to the top of the dirt when they found the kid sitting in their guard chair. They yelled at the kid to get out, which the kid replied with, "Make me," before proceeding to lob dirt and sticks at OP and his friends. What OP remembers happening afterwards was that the kid fell out of the chair and hit the ground. When OP and his friends went to go check on the kid, he was in an awkward position and blood was coming out of his mouth. OP panicked and they all ran away, never to speak about this incident ever again. OP says that since this happened in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of coverage on the death like there would have been nowadays, so he doesn't know of any articles covering the case. Immediately after, Reddit did what they do best, and uncovered multiple articles and websites about the death. The child's name was Scott Clisholti, and all the missing persons articles tell the same story. He went missing in 1988. Scott had left home when a thunderstorm hit and he was never seen again. Police tried to search him down by scent, but a body was never found, and it was assumed that he was washed away in the storm. I don't think it's 100% confirmed that this was the kid OP was talking about, but I'm pretty sure they took place in the same area and during the same time period, so that's something. The man who ate his own foot. Okay, this one's pretty gross, so feel free to skip this if you don't like cannibalism. I mean, the title really speaks for itself. 3 years ago, a post was made to the Ask Me Anything subreddit where OP describes how he got into a motorcycle accident 2 years ago and his foot was pretty messed up. Eventually, he amputated his foot and asked the doctors if he could keep it. Unfortunately, they said yes, and OP then proceeds to take his foot and make tacos. Moving on. Homicidal Memer. A Reddit user by the name of Narato posted a meme that says, "My sister had an abusive meth addict boyfriend. I killed him with his own drugs while he was unconscious and they ruled it as an overdose." A lot of users were quick to wonder, hey, maybe this isn't a meme and OP just admitted to a murder. OP says, "No, come on guys, this is a joke," and then proceeds to delete his entire account, so take that as you will. Red is Blue 101. Red is Blue is a 24-year-old user who had a now deleted post about how he accidentally killed his girlfriend. From the remnant I could find, the post reads as follows. "This was the first time I ever did something so physically violent towards her. I told her I was sorry. She said, 'Leave now.' I began saying sorry even more and asked her if I could get a hug. She was still crying. I go up to her and try to give her a hug. Almost out of nowhere, she grabs a knife by the sink. Initially, I thought she was just going to hold it to try and tell me to leave. She doesn't. She comes at me in full force, aiming towards my face. I tell her to stop. She doesn't. I tried grabbing the knife but ended up cutting my hands. After a few cuts, I lost it. I freaked out. I was scared and in a state of shock. Never in 100 years did I think she would use a knife against me. Out of shock and fear, I grab one. I hit her with it, almost blindly, a few times. I didn't know what had happened. I was confused, shocked, and scared. I had no intentions of what happened, but when I left, I honestly thought she had just passed out. Then I looked at the blood and started freaking out and just ran. I didn't know for sure that she had died until that next day. I honestly had no intentions of ever doing that to her. I was protecting myself." Police found his girlfriend's body shortly after, and ever since, OP has been on the run and is said to have crossed the border from Canada into the US. The Butcherer. The Butcherer is a lost media post made to r/tip-of-my-tongue where OP describes how back in the early 2000s, he used to live in South America and he once watched a short film on Nickelodeon called The Butcherer. OP only remembers this because the short film was abnormally dark for something that would be on Nickelodeon. He describes it as a human hand with a knife carving up animals made out of bones that all looked like this. OP says that at one point, the bones fused together into some abomination which sounds terrifying, so I'm glad that I never saw this. And from what I know, no footage has ever been found. The Whistler. 6 years ago, a post was made to r/askreddit inquiring about the creepiest thing that's actually happened to users before. A user named BingBong1234 responded with a lengthy story that he's titled The Whistler. When OP was 8, he was taking a walk by a lake with his mom when all of a sudden, they heard some guy whistling down at the lake. It was this really out of tune whistling that actually freaked out OP's mom, so she rushed them both inside for the rest of the night. 2 years later, OP is walking his dog, and when he's almost back home, he hears the exact same out-of-tune whistling from behind a bush that was large enough to conceal a person. He feels the same way his mom did 2 years ago and rushes inside with the dog. Fast forward to last summer, OP is now 24, and for the 4th of July, he's taking his girlfriend out to the river to see fireworks. OP says that police boats were herding all the other boats out of the area that OP was in, and most of the other campers walked up the river to get a better view of the fireworks, but he and his girlfriend stayed back. Suddenly, they hear the sound of a paddleboard dipping into the water, and they saw a figure steering a canoe about 20 meters offshore. OP is watching the person as his girlfriend leaves to go get some beer, when suddenly the person starts whistling at OP, the same whistle that he had experienced many times beforehand. He freezes up and yells out, "Who are you?" which prompts the guy on the boat to do a 180 and paddle away. OP is actually a photographer, so he had his camera with him to get pictures of the fireworks. Luckily, he gets some footage of the Whistler, and here's a video that proves a lot of what OP just said, but take this as you will.
Are you whistling? Is it you? Stop it.
Unlikely addict. U/spontaneous H is a user who started posting 12 years ago on the Ask Me Anything subreddit. His first post was, "I did heroin yesterday. I'm not a drug user. Ask me anything." I'm not going to describe the first post because I do not condone the use of illegal substances, but 2 weeks after, OP made a follow-up post on the same subreddit, stating that he's now been using it ever since. The post describes how OP is constantly in withdrawal, vomiting, sweating. OP says that he wishes he was trolling, but sadly he's not. And then silence. For a year. A year later, a post was made to yet again the same subreddit, stating that I am a patient in a psychiatric hospital. I was also technically dead last week. Ask me anything. OP replies to comments saying that he's doing better than he was a year ago and he is enjoying his stay at the hospital. When asked to explain how he was dead last week, OP says that he overdosed on many different things I've never even heard of before, which resulted in a blocked airway. He's only alive because he was found and resuscitated by paramedics. A follow-up post is made to OP's psychiatric stay, stating that he's being moved to a drug abuse unit, and that Reddit warned me that I would become an addict when I did an Ask Me Anything a little over a year ago after first trying heroin. Needless to say, I didn't listen, and am now paying the consequences. Whether or not it would have made a difference is questionable considering my personality. A staggering number of bipolar people become addicts. This is my third extremely close encounter with death. I've done more than you probably know exists. You got that right. This is my third chance at life, and I don't know if I will get any more. Ask me anything. 7 years later, after a long period of silence, OP would make a post about how he has been clean off drugs and alcohol for 6 years and that life is good. 94 days ago from the time of writing the script, OP would make a post saying that he is alive, clean, and doing well. Congratulations, OP. Mysterious store. 2 years ago, a user named IcemanThrowaway123 would make a post to the Too Afraid to Ask subreddit about how 12 identical grocery stores opened up on his street not too long ago. They're all named some variation of each other and all sell near expired or actually expired Walmart brand groceries. They only accept cash unless you're willing to pay some $50. Now this sounds like blatant money laundering scheme, but what's interesting is that OP has never made a follow-up and he never posted any pictures, so this kind of leads me to believe that this is fake, but who knows. I was in a cult. U/throwaway181718 made a post to the Confessions subreddit detailing their experience in a therapy camp that actually turned out to be a cult. The camp leaders made sure that no one inside the camp could contact the outside, so when OP eventually stole his phone back from the camp leaders, he called his parents to ask them to come pick him up and escaped. He was hunted down by the camp leaders while escaping, and after escaping, OP would occasionally see the camp leaders outside his house, and he refused to go outside out of fear of being kidnapped or worse. OP was even scared to type the group name because he thought that it would lead to them finding out where he was. And after a bit, OP mentioned that they had moved houses and the police had started an investigation. Eventually, OP returned to make a mysterious and out of the blue post. How do I delete a message I posted? On the r/help subreddit. Since OP finally returned, users questioned him more about his current condition and the cult. OP replied with the following. This is not true. I was part of a therapy group that specializes in helping teenagers with mental health problems. It was not a cult. Since then, I have decided to rejoin the group. I will answer no further questions on this matter. This was obviously super suspicious and prompted users to believe that OP was kidnapped and this cult had control over its Reddit account, which they were using to dispel the rumors. Not only that, the writing style is completely different to OP's original post. Also, if OP was smart enough to make a throwaway account, then I'm sure he probably knows how to delete a post, but apparently whoever was in control of the account at the time didn't. Nextwell has a great video on this, I'll link it in the description. Late night recordings. 7 years ago, a user named RedOnceBlue80 made a post to r/ghosts about an app she was using that records you during your sleep. You know, like the ones that pick up when you snore and whatnot. So the post says that OP woke up one morning after sleeping in bed with her 3-year-old, but when she checked the app, she noticed that something strange happened at 2:04 a.m. Have a listen.
What are you doing? Okay.
You can hear OP say, "What are you doing?" And then a deep voice responds with, "Nothing." And then a series of clicking noises followed by the sound of someone saying, "That's them." In 2015, OP moved out of the house because no one could figure out where the voices came from. Some people say it might have been intruders or kidnappers, and others say it's a hoax. Datura. In 2017, u/flipandflop made a post to r/drugs saying, "Finally got my hands on some Datura. How much should I take?" Now if you don't know what Datura is, it's a deliriant that side effects can last up to 2 weeks or longer. Even r/drugs knows to stay away from Datura, so many users commented things like, "None, don't take any," etc. Flip and Flop would go on to ignore these comments and proceed to take what's considered by Reddit to be way too much Datura. Shortly after, OP made a post that reads as follows: Google.com. How normal again, stop now. So you can probably guess by now what's happening to OP, and so did all of Reddit, wondering if it was too late to save OP. 12 hours later, OP would comment on a post from r/gaming of mammoths fighting in totally accurate battle simulator. So what did OP say? "Please, these big dog are fighting not okay." And as far as I know, OP was never heard from again, which leads us to assume the worst. Daryl Pratt. u/Daryl Pratt is a user who was obsessed over Alana Pierce, a gaming content creator. OP would make many posts about how he's obsessed with her, how they were meant to be, how he was in love with her, etc. And he would constantly flood her PMs and comment sections, leading him to get multiple bans on multiple platforms, but he just kept coming in with new accounts. I think he expected for Reddit to support him, and that's why he made so many posts, but Redditors just told him to go to therapy. Looking through his post history, you can see this man spiral into madness, posting things like, "How much trouble would I get in if I hugged a girl who didn't want to be hugged?" Which makes me assume he was going to try and get close to her at a meet and greet or convention. OP would make many accounts after receiving tons of hate on each one, but the most notable is u/Daryl Prater V4, which would make several posts to the firearms subreddit, all with the same title. If you were surrounded by zombies and had to shoot yourself with either a 9mm or a .45, which would you pick? Obviously, this seems like OP is going to do something he might regret, which is what a lot of Redditors assumed, but he was eventually seen on other sides of the internet with the same usernames that he used on Reddit, so we can assume that he's still alive. Quantum immortality. Quantum immortality is the idea that you cannot perceive yourself dying because you'll be dead. So therefore, every time something happens to you that results in your death, 2 timelines will split off of the current timeline, one where you live and one where you die. You will go on to live in the timeline where you're still alive because you just can't perceive yourself dying. So from your point of view, you'll just be unkillable, but from the point of view of bystanders in other timelines, you will be dead. u/AFH43 is someone who discovered this theory 4 years ago and made a post to the Ask Physics subreddit. The post reads as follows: "The theory of quantum immortality has driven me to a state of pure anxiety and terror over the last week. Is it true? Has it been debunked? I can't do this anymore." Obviously, OP is in a state of intense anxiety right now, but all the comments just say things like, "Why so worried?" OP makes a similar post to r/askphilosophy where the comments just say, "Yeah, it's not real, calm down." The next few posts are all variations of each other, saying things like, "The possibility of quantum immortality is making my life unbearable. Please help me. Existential crisis. It won't stop. I'm losing my mind." And it stops there. OP has not been heard from for 4 years, and whether he discovered the truth behind quantum immortality is unknown, but we can only hope that he didn't try to figure it out for himself. Nickelodeon hamster wheel. Nickelodeon Hamster Wheel is another piece of lost media from Nickelodeon, just like The Butcherer, but instead this time it's about nude people walking towards a giant hamster wheels and getting into them. Not going to dive too deep into this one because I'm pretty sure it hasn't been found yet, but if you know where to find this footage, then congrats, you just solved a mystery. OP definitely didn't kill his wife. In 2015, a user by the name of Concerned Hubs would make a post to the legal advice subreddit titled "Need advice on talking to police regarding my wife." The post details how OP's wife has not returned home since she went out shopping late Saturday, and OP wants to contact the police, but he's concerned that they will be suspicious of him, so he hasn't. OP says he can't postpone his visit to the police much longer, as he is getting messages from his wife's family and friends, so he plans to visit them tomorrow morning. But he wants advice on how to avoid suspicion. OP later adds an update that says his wife left him a note that she is going out of town for a few days, so no need to report this to the police. This garnered a lot of suspicion from Reddit users, the very thing OP was trying to avoid. It seems like OP might have killed his wife, and he's trying to avoid suspicion, so he asks Reddit. But when he gets suspicion from Reddit, he says, "Oh well, she's just leaving, so no need to contact the police. Haha, don't worry everyone, didn't kill my wife." U/SayPro. Once again, cannibalism warning, so if you skip the guy who ate his own foot, then skip this one as well. I'm not going deep into this one because I don't want to, but basically OP bought a motorcycle helmet that didn't fit because his cheeks were too fat. So what did he do? Well, he cuts open his cheek and takes a bit of fat out and eats it, which the last part seems a bit unnecessary. No, the whole thing seems unnecessary. What am I even saying? I'm not going to go into more detail. Redditor gets revenge on his son. 2 years ago, u/crazyson_throwoff made a post to confessions about how he let his wife almost kill their son, and he was happy she did so. The story goes that OP and his wife had a son who was very troubled, and I mean very troubled. OP describes his son as evil, wrong. His whole life revolved around hurting others, including his family. As his son grew older, he also grew more violent, even going as far as lighting living and non-living things on fire. When OP's son was 16, OP's wife got pregnant again, and they hoped that it didn't come out like their son because, quote, they couldn't do it again. OP's son worsened with this new family member, and it soon came around that the only interaction OP had with his son was screaming and fighting. OP and his wife kept every door locked in their home because of OP's son's violent behavior. So one day, it came as a surprise to OP to find his son climb through the window of his daughter's room and stand over her with a steak knife. OP grabs the knife away from his son, and OP's wife beats her son to a pulp, to the point where OP was unsure if his son was still alive. But he was still alive, and he lived in their house for a long time afterwards. OP never saw his son again though, because they kept to their own parts of the house, keeping doors locked in between. Eventually OP ventures into his son's part of the house, and it's completely trashed, with no sign of his son. Post-it notes. 6 years ago in the legal advice subreddit, a user would make a post about finding mysterious post-it notes in his home. The post describes how OP found notes that did not appear to be in his handwriting and that didn't make any sense. Strange, out of context sentences like, "saved my documents," and "our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important we do." OP also found that his computer's trash had been completely emptied even though he didn't recall doing that. OP suspects that for some reason his landlord is breaking into his house and doing all these things, so he pulls out a letter from his landlord and compares the handwriting, which seems to match up well enough. Many users commented that there would be no reason for a landlord to do any of this, and it could possibly be some underlying health issue that OP was facing that caused him to forget what he's done. One user actually recommended he get a carbon monoxide detector in case there was something wrong in that department, and what do you know? OP figured out that he had carbon monoxide poisoning. The most recent thing OP has done on Reddit was a comment made a year ago, so I'm sure he's fine nowadays. Someone at the window. This is literally just a picture that OP took at his cousin's cabin where he accidentally captured this little dude standing outside the door, so there you go. Hikers. 7 years ago, an Ask Reddit post was made inquiring about the creepiest thing that hikers and backpackers have found. But what we are here for is one comment made by u/Gadella08, whose comment describes how he and his friends found a 22-year-old girl face down in the mud with both of her legs broken. So the story goes that OP and his friends were hiking near a 150-foot waterfall, and they decided to go walk around the base when they found the girl, and they called 911. A helicopter soon arrived to lift her out. Apparently the girl and her friend were hiking the night before, and when they both fell off the waterfall, her friend tried to go get help but died about 300 feet away from where OP found the first girl. But the creepiest part about this is that OP and his friends took some picture of the waterfall without even realizing the girl was in the background. I'm not entirely sure if I can show these photos, but I'll probably just end up blurring them, so. Luckily enough, this girl was still alive. Drug dealer's mistake. 2 years ago, u/MESC997 made a post to the Confessions subreddit about his experience being a drug dealer on the dark web. After a couple months, OP made about $25,000 selling any sort of drug you can think of. OP kept all his buyers' names and addresses in an Excel spreadsheet, but long story short, Excel messed up and about 7 people who ordered a weak psychedelic accidentally received fentanyl, which this mistake went unnoticed for 5 days until OP was contacted by a friend of one of his buyers, saying that his friend had died from this psychedelic. OP went to go check what he had sent out and saw that he accidentally sent out fentanyl. OP immediately deactivated his account and waited a few days before googling his clients' names to see what happened to them. 4 customers definitely died, and one of those shared it with a friend who also died. After that, OP cut himself off from society and is clearly in a depressive state, and he hasn't been seen online since that post. BabyBlues17. u/BabyBlues17 is a user who made a post to r/legal advice because they were being investigated by Child Protective Services before their child was even born. OP is currently pregnant and married to a previous felon who's worked hard to change his life and hasn't touched any substances for about 17 years. Someone in OP's area contacted CPS because of her husband's previous drug use, and OP says they are both being interrogated heavily and their home has been searched many times. Their caseworker tells OP that there's a chance their child will be taken away from them, but they can't provide any more details about it. Users were quick to notice the suspicious behavior by the caseworker and how this case doesn't even make sense, because the child hasn't even been born yet. 2 former CPS workers chimed in the comments, one of them even being from the same state as OP, saying that CPS doesn't investigate people with no current children and something is seriously wrong. Many users say to verify that the caseworker actually works for CPS. A while after, OP made a follow-up post describing how she got in contact with a lawyer who agreed that something was very fishy about the case. It turns out that the caseworker had no affiliation with CPS. OP can't provide a lot of details because it's an ongoing investigation case, and the police are taking many precautions to make sure that the child is born safely and not taken away by the fraud. But that's scary to know, that OP was almost tricked by a fake CPS worker. Snapped fingers. Buckle down, this is a sad one. 2 years ago, u/snappedfingers made a post to the Confessions subreddit about seeing someone get run over by a train and not feeling anything. In this post, he describes how on his way to work, OP saw the incident happen right before his eyes, but he didn't feel a single emotion. OP wonders if this is normal and if anything is wrong with him, which commenters just say everyone processes things differently. But deep down, I think OP felt something because his next post was shortly after on r/advice, which was titled, "Seeing and Hearing Things That Aren't There." OP describes how he's hearing things and seeing things in his peripheral vision, like spiders crawling all over him. He doesn't want to get any doctors involved because he doesn't want to be treated like a quote, scientific experimentation again, and he doesn't have any friends he can turn to because they all left him. The following are his next few posts. Post 3. If I bit my own finger off, could it be reattached or attached somewhere else? Post 4. In 2008, I stuck a power drill into my arm. This could possibly be when OP was treated like an experiment in the past and could hint at some underlying mental health issues. Post 4. How much of you do interdimensional beings require to leave you alone for good? blood ritual. In this post, Opie is once again talking about seeing and hearing things that aren't real, and if he can sacrifice a finger to these beings to get them to leave him alone. He mentions that he's in a Discord group talking to experts about the matter. Posts 6 and 7 are about how to effectively deal with interdimensional beings. On post 6, there's a very important commenter who says, "My guy, people on the internet are known far and wide for messing with people by convincing them that hallucinations and other mental health phenomena are rational." I brought this up because I believe that the Discord group that OP belongs to could be encouraging this behavior just for fun. I remember hearing this theory from someone else, but I can't remember where. In the next few posts, OP starts rambling about the catacombs in Paris. Is there really a hell portal down in the Paris catacombs? Current objective: locate exact position of the hell portal hidden down in Paris catacombs. Do I have schizophrenia? No. How do you shut down hell portals? Advice for traveling unofficial routes in the Paris catacombs. Paris trip good to go. Invite me back to the Discord. We'll be entering the catacombs in a few hours-ish. And that was the last time OP was heard from. We can use these posts to guess that maybe OP's health issues were triggered by the train incident, which caused him to spiral and be welcomed into a Discord group that encouraged this behavior and told him that he must go down to the Paris catacombs to close a portal. If OP really did enter the catacombs, then we can only assume the worst, as he planned to travel on unofficial routes. Losing time. In a now deleted post on I'm not even sure what subreddit, a user described their experience with a man in a coat that she would occasionally bump into and then quote, lose time. The story goes that 4 years ago, OP bumped into a strange man on her way home, just standing there, smoking in a down coat. All he did was stare at her, which kind of freaked OP out, so she made her way back home. But all of a sudden, when she blinked, she was back in her building, turning the key to her apartment door. Fast forward 3.5 years, OP is now pregnant and going to take out the trash. As she closes the dumpster lid, she hears a man talking and looks over to see none other than the man in the down coat, who was at this time talking on the phone angrily to someone, but still just staring OP down. OP starts to back away when the man starts ripping apart his flip phone and throwing it to the ground, approaching her in the process. OP runs away, and next thing she knows, she's in the hospital for a bad fever. Time had skipped again. Another run-in happens when OP looks through her peephole and sees the man, and then wakes up sitting at her kitchen table. And it was really hot, so she goes to turn down her thermostat, which for some reason was at 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I had no idea what this could possibly be, but the comments unanimously decided on one thing. Something was wrong with OP's brain. Could be that the man in the coat is your brain communicating that you are about to have a seizure. I'm with the others. You need to visit a neurologist. I'd go to the doctor. I really hope not, but what if you have a brain tumor? It could cause some vivid hallucinations. Also, losing time is typical of a seizure. It could be many things, but I really hope it has nothing to do with health. Definitely sounds like an absent seizure. Please get checked out. I wish I knew who had originally posted this so I can check up on them, but it's pretty scary to know that for years now, something has been up with OP's brain and she could possibly have been having absent seizures, which is where you kind of have a lapse in attention and consciousness. Nothing brings me joy. u/reredrum_ledissimo is a user who for the past 11 years has been making posts to r/pics, all with the same title. I am blank years old, never married, rent a small room, and nothing brings me joy except my art. My best is far from good, since I have no one to share with, let me share with you. So his username backwards is homicidal murderer, but I have really nothing to conclude that this man is a murderer, but it's kind of been crazy that he's been posting 1 to 2 times a year about how he's not married and nothing brings him joy but art. He could possibly be a very dedicated troll. Cockroach. Okay, this one is funny and a bit lighthearted. u/I-love-roach made a post to the Today I Messed Up subreddit, stating that today I messed up by admitting to my girlfriend that I pretend she is a giant cockroach. The post describes how ever since OP read The Metamorphosis, a book by Kafka about a guy who wakes up as a giant roach beetle thing, He's been obsessed over cockroaches. OP invented this imaginary friend, but instead of a friend, it was a giant cockroach named Ogtha that he was in love with. OP actually loses interest in real women and says that, quote, "I don't want to think about girls at all. There is only Ogtha." Once OP actually got a girlfriend, he tried to not imagine her as Ogtha the cockroach, but it was too difficult. So he finally comes out and tells his girlfriend that he likes to think she is a cockroach, and now his girlfriend won't respond to his messages. Yeah, I probably wouldn't either. Dogman. U/Flax and Flare made a post 6 years ago to the Let's Not Meet subreddit about an incident where OP put their dog outside right before bed, and a scratch was heard on the door indicating that the dog wants to be let back inside. OP looks through the peephole in the door because they say they are paranoid from watching too many scary movies, but instead of seeing a dog, they see a man standing there. Frozen up, OP watches as the man once again scratches the door as he waits for it to open with a knife in his hand. OP doesn't open the door and just waits until the man walks down the street and leaves. OP basically came to the conclusion that the man was pretending to be their dog so they would open the door and he would stab them. Personally, I'm not really inclined to believe that this is real because who looks through their peephole every time they open a door, but maybe that's just me. Special Delivery. Special Delivery is a post made 7 years ago where OP just comes home to a coffin in his driveway, which people say had a key and coordinates in it. The coordinates led to a cemetery in Luxembourg, but since OP lives in the States, he couldn't go over there. People have gone to where the coordinates are, and it just seems to be a regular old graveyard, so this is probably just an elaborate prank to trick OP into traveling to Europe, but then again, coffins are really expensive, so that would be a very expensive prank. But I mean, what other explanation for this is there? It's just a coffin in this man's driveway for no reason. Accidentally killed 7 people. Throwaway time. What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? This Ask Reddit thread had a lot of replies, and I feel like I've seen it before, but there's one comment on it by u/AMGPU that stands out. The post reads as follows: I accidentally killed 7 people. I put a rag into the new water heater exhaust to keep debris out, and I installed it in a rental. I got a call a week later. There's been an accident. I show up, and there's tons of EMs and police. They ask me where the gas shutoff is, and I go down to shut off the gas. But I also see that the rag I forgot is sticking out of the top of the heater. I rip the rag out, shut off the gas, and head upstairs, only to be told all the tenants were dead. I drink and sleep all day now. It's killing me from inside every single day, but if I say anything, my family's ruined. We have a bunch of rental properties and we'd be shut down. Yeah, just another sad story of accidental murder, which I feel like we've had a lot of in this video. Creepy landlord. On r/Let's Not Meet, a post was made 8 years ago about OP who lived in an apartment where the landlord was a sweet old lady named Olivia, who would often cook food for OP and leave it on her doorstep. After a few months in the apartment, OP starts noticing that things are moving around or disappearing, but she convinces herself that it's just anxiety caused by the move. One day, Olivia brings a salad for OP, who eats it and then falls asleep during the day, only to wake up at 5 p.m. noticing that the other side of her bed was disturbed and unusually warm. She eventually forgets about this because it wasn't too out of the ordinary. By next month, however, it was worse than normal, as all types of items were being moved around the house, and an odd odor would be in the air every morning. OP leaves the apartment to go back to her parents, but when OP's dad checks the apartment out, there's writing all over the walls saying, "Come back" and "Baby please." OP's dad called the police and an investigation was started. Police found out that it was Olivia the landlord's son who was the one behind it all. He would drug the food that Olivia gave to OP and then break into the apartment using his mom's master key, so that he could watch OP sleep and collect her hair, clothing, and trash. Thai cry for help. u/Fujita-Giken001 is a user who posted on all sorts of subreddits 5 years ago with the exact same phrase each time. I face a serious problem of human rights at Fujita Giken, Thailand. Please help me. Looking up Fujita Giken, you can find this unpopular factory in Thailand. Thailand does actually have a history of human rights violations and illegal activities in their factories, such as employees being underpaid or having poor working conditions. So this doesn't seem too unrealistic. But honestly, I'm not sure if we can do anything about this other than spread the word. Who else can't sleep? On r/news, a post was made 9 years ago titled 19 firefighters working Yarnell Hill fire confirmed dead. And there's just this seemingly out of the blue reply to a deleted comment that just says, "You know who else can't sleep? The 3-year-old your stepdad buried alive and killed. Disgusting." Coyle said he pushed his girlfriend's kid and thought she was dead when she hit her head against the wall, so he buried her in a desert near Mesa, where he was a firefighter and EMT at the time. He later admitted to it, and emergency personnel found the child alive. However, she died the very next day. Commenters were obviously confused by this, but one person replied with, "It's basically just as he said." The Yarnell fire chief, Jim Coyle, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter back in the 70s for hitting his girlfriend's daughter, burying her in the desert thinking she was dead, her being recovered the very next day, and subsequently dying. So I guess this leads me to believe that the deleted comment was the stepson of Jim Coyle, who apparently was commenting on this news article, but wow. Bone in the boot. What dirty little secret of someone else's have you been dying to tell? I'm starting to see a pattern of where all these entries are coming from, but this Ask Reddit post had 9,500 replies to it, one of which being from u/someone you don't know, who said the following. Former best friend participated in a boot party where they curb stomped a man to death. She called me drunk the next morning to laugh about the piece of skull embedded in her boot. I never spoke to her again. Wow. That's awful. And that wraps up the disturbing Reddit posts Iceberg. I feel like I could have lived my entire life without reading most of these entries, but there you go. If I had to read it, you had to hear it. As always, thank you for watching, and good night.